my friends, what a veritable trove of spice we found. But is it safe to harvest? I heard that the spice summons the worms. Nonsense! Any risk is worth it because he who controls the spice controls the universe. But what is that on the horizon? Worm sign!
Oh no, he's got me. Oh. Look, fear may be the mind killer, but boredom is the fun killer. Fortunately for you, you don't have to make an admittingly adorable pipe cleaner sandworm in order to have a little fun on Arrakis, because Dune Imperium is here. It's a game of consequences and opportunities, a game where every action you take is simple, but has really meaningful and rippling consequences for you and all the other houses in the Landsrod. But that alone doesn't make it significant. Sure, it's got the cool Herbertian theme, individual mechanics are fun, and it balances the edge between depth and approachability quite well. But what separates this Kwisatz Haderach from all the other games in the barn is that it's about as cohesive of a system as you can make from all its disparate parts, bringing in aspects of deck building, worker placement, and just a hint of area control to make a smooth and quite potent melange. In Dune, you play as one of several leaders like Timothy Chalamet, Oscar Isaac, or classic Magic the Gathering card Abomination, initially controlling 2 workers that you'll place in each of the games up to 10 rounds. Workers can be assigned to unoccupied spaces affiliated with different political factions and regions on Dune, but how you assign workers is driven by your deck, initially consisting of a starting group of 10 cards. Cards, for the most part, have one or more symbols that relate to the different regions and factions, and potentially has either a when played to place a worker effect, or when held till the end of the round effect, or both. To place a worker, you discard a card, do what it says in the gray box, place in an unoccupied space sharing one of the symbols with your card, and resolve the space. When you no longer have workers or choose to pass out of the round, you reveal your remaining cards, which will largely give you use it or lose it money to purchase new cards, other resources like spice, water, or solari, which interact with the action spaces or add strength to the conflict, a sort of combative bidding that you assign cubes to throughout the round, resulting in awards for most, second most, and in higher player count games, third most strength. So what is this game? What has everyone talking about it like it's the Sandtrout's pajamas? I mean, on its surface, it's not too innovative. The worker placement is just basic worker placement, and the deck building is just basic resource-based deck building. And the area control, well, your troops in combat feel a bit more like cash at an auction, since committed troops always die at the end of a round. But it's how those aspects work together and the meaningful decisions that are created by the tension of those relationships that makes it such a cool game. Take the deck building. Normal gaming instincts would have you work on an engine, tossing starting cards and getting cards that produce money, which leads to better and more expensive cards, which leads to eventually buying some traditional Dominion-esque sandworm points. And this game lets you do that, but it might come at the expense of many cards that interact with the end-of-round conflicts, which in themselves are great sources of resources and points. And bear in mind that the game ends at the end of any round in which someone has reached 10 or more points, so the pressure to make swift grabs is high. But let's say you focus on combat cards alone. Well, those cards may be great, but if you aren't paying attention to what worker spots your purchased cards allow you to go to, you may be missing out on some of the best actions in the game. The Fremen get you precious water and are a good source of contributing troops to conflict. The Bene Gesserit allow you to trash and draw cards and give you powerful and secretive intrigue cards that range from nice play on your turn effects to endgame bonus points to added little combat-oriented shashas. The Spacing Guild has one of the dopest spots to drop troops into combat in the game, at the expense of the spice needed for their navigators, of course, and the empirical spaces are all about dat money. Important, though, is that each political faction has a ladder that you climb when you use one of their action spaces. Whenever anyone gets to their second level, they get a point, but once someone reaches level 4 or above, they get the alliance point, which can be contested, claimed by whoever has the highest relationship with that faction. And this sort of relationship holds true for basically everything that you do in the game. So many things are multi-purpose, and while the same general loop of spending cards and dudes in order to get resources to get points is still in here, yes, you'll want to buy your third worker by getting loads of spice and selling it to the Chome Company and then recruiting your meeple from the Mentats, but all of your decisions will be driven by a sort of four-dimensional tug-of-war where opportunity cost and what you just can't let your opponents have is king. In a lesser game, this inability to do all the things would feel claustrophobic, but the game hits the right balance to make it feel divergent and exciting. As with most games though, not everything is perfect. Though the bit of asymmetry through your character's static power and very clever application of a special effect whenever your signet ring comes up adds some replayability, after several games the action spaces themselves start feeling a bit dry, mainly just a way to maneuver the game's many resources of water, Solari, spice, and troops. And the cards that you add to your deck do go a long way to cultivate cool strategies, especially when you layer synergistic cards together, but the market consists of only a couple cards that are always available, including Sally Sandworm, the big fat cost point maker, and 5 cards which are randomly drawn from the deck. Usually there's enough cool stuff that players claim these cards and keep it rotating, but sometimes cards will flip up that just don't really add things to your decks or are too low powered to meaningfully add to your strategies by late game. And when that happens, the market can remain stagnant because no one's buying anything and there's no standard mechanism in the game to clear and refresh the cards. How does a game released in 2020 not have that? But all that aside, these are minor issues of a game that I'm extremely happy with. And don't get me wrong, yes, I am a huge Dune nerd, but that only matters insofar as it's a good game, and then it's a service to my fandom. My wife likes it just about as much as me, and she couldn't care less about Dune, but she latches on to good, hearty mid-weight Euro games that employ some of her favorite gaming elements. Another great surprise is that it works fantastic as a solo and 2-player game driven by an extremely easy to manage automated system. I was a bit leery at first of having to automate a 3rd player in a 2-player game, but for the most part all it involves is flipping a card, placing a worker to occupy a space, and possibly contesting alliances with the 4 factions or throwing a wrench into your combat. When I considered this against what other games do, either reducing the amount of space available to go to on the board, which feels like you're only playing half of the game, or doing nothing, which reduces pressure, that is one of the main features of what makes these games compelling in the first place, I was completely sold. Solo is slightly more complicated as Hagal interacts with more aspects of the board and gets points, and they can and will beat you, but it makes for an interesting, easy to facilitate, and challenging system that would be well worth trying if you have yet to play a solo game. This game feels cohesive in a way that's so rejuvenating without having to resort to subverting its respective genres. Something about it feels so obvious, like it could have been made 10 years ago, but yet it is distinctly exciting and new. Accessible, challenging, competitive, and clever, my bar was set high for a Euro Dune game, and boy, did it deliver. And that is our review. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcasts, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.